Good morning, Linked HR, wherever you are in the world. I am Dr. Chris Wildermuth, your community chair. And today I wanted to very briefly talk about toxic leadership. Specifically, my main question to you at the end is going to be about the grain of truth. My grain of truth question will be, do you have any small components of toxic leader in you? So, as I go through the various components of toxic leadership, think about yourself and if there are moments in which you display those behaviors. By the way, what I'm talking about comes from a paper that I've been writing with a group of fabulous graduate and undergraduate students from Drake University. A shout out to my students, a shout out to my institution. This has been a blast working in several hands like that and having multiple meetings, and it's so exciting to see the paper finally ready. And the paper is tentatively called Monsters, Inc., Toxic Leadership and Engagement. So here are some of the things that we saw people do terribly wrong. The first one is that toxic leaders liked to flaunt their power and keep social distance. So if they could somehow show their status, they did that. And of course, people felt isolated and they were afraid to come to the leader. But there was another reason why people didn't want to come to the leader, and that is they were emotional time bombs. They could explode at any moment, which created an environment of fear. And what was interesting is that people were upset even if the time bomb was not directed at them. In other words, even if they heard the leader just berating somebody else, belittling somebody else, that destroyed the morale and the feelings of safety of the entire team, regardless of to whom that emotional outburst was directed. The third thing that leaders did, and that's actually pretty high, I'm not necessarily going in order of importance or number of occurrences in the data or anything like that, I'm just going logically. So the third thing that these leaders did is that they were inauthentic. So participants talked about people playing a part and being different behind closed doors and in a meeting where higher-ups were present. There were also instances of unethical behavior, such as playing favorites or not keeping confidentiality. And in fact, if you look at Kouzes and Posner's research and their fabulous book, The Leadership Challenge, which is now in its, I don't know, umpteenth, whatever, thousandth edition, you will see that in Kouzes and Posner's research, integrity, a perception of the leader's integrity, is like if not the top, the second top, like one of the most important components of leadership credibility. The next thing that toxic leaders were either laissez-faire and totally absent, as in, leader, moi, do I have to come here or do anything? Or could I over-delegate, like delegate things that I shouldn't be delegating, and thus basically dumping work on other people. So they were either like that, laissez-faire, I don't care, I'm not here, I don't really need to help you, or they could be too controlling and try to micromanage things that really didn't matter. And finally, one thing that I kind of found myself in there, and I was a little worried in terms of the grain of truth idea, and that is that the toxic leaders, they changed directions so quickly and they moved so fast that they could leave people completely lost and bewildered and never knowing where to go. So let's look back. Let me come back to these things. So the Monster Inc. or the toxic leader was power hungry and kept his or her distance. They were emotional time bombs. They were inauthentic, like they needed to play a particular role. And we will talk about role behavior theory and how that applies to leadership in a following session, because that's super interesting too. They were absent, either absent, laissez-faire, or too controlling. And they changed, or I should say, because not all those things would necessarily be present in the same leader, they could be change directions too fast and too suddenly. So those in general were the findings. We didn't exactly divide them like that, but that's basically, in a nutshell, what we found that people were so upset about. And if you ask me if that impacted employees' engagement, yes, it did. So, 2 questions for HR professionals in our group. The first one is the grain of truth question, and that is, are there moments in which you could be any of those things, even inadvertently, even without knowing? And the second question is, as an HR professional, and in particular, a shout out to talent development professionals or people in our group who work hard towards developing leaders in your organizations or in other people's organizations. What can you do to develop, support, encourage a leadership environment in which leaders are not toxic? So that's what I had for today. Happy learning and happy leadership development, everyone. Have a wonderful week.